Hello, everybody. I think we have everything in operation, so we are ready to start. Sorry for the delay. We had our IT department attending to another emergency, so sorry for the delay, but we will get going now. First, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, whether in person or live stream. A couple of things just to get started tonight. We have a microphone off to the side. Anybody that needs to speak, please only speak if they are at the microphone. Anybody that goes to the mic, we're going to ask them to introduce themselves. And I have to also ask everybody at this table that they do not speak without this microphone, which I will hand off when they need to speak. With that, I want to start off with some introductions. I'm going to ask everybody up here to introduce themselves. By now, you probably all know me, Sherwin Greenfield, so that's enough introduction for me, and I will start with Gary.
Good evening. My name is Gary Nash. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations for United States Practical Shooting. Been a member, active in the sport since very early 2008.
Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming. For those of you who don't know, I'm Leighton Westhuizen. I've been shooting USPSA for since about 1992. Grandmaster, shot a couple of world shoots, and been in RO I think since 92 or 93 as well. What? Did I say Area 2? Oh, I'm Area 2 Director. I'm sorry.
Troy McManus, Director of the National Range Officers Institute. I've been involved with the sport since about 1989. I'm not a GM or anything like that. I like to shoot, but that's pretty much it.
I'm Lee Cabana. I am the Area 7 Director. I've been in the sport for a little more than 10 years. I guess I'm your average C-class shooter. I'm the kind of guy that when I get home after a match, my wife asks, did I have fun? So that's me.
Matt Hopkins, Area 3 Director. I've been shooting since 2007, and I've been on the board 6 weeks now.
Hi, I am Jake Martins, Director of Media and Events. I've been a member since 2004, and Match Director here for this event. You ready? How long have you been in this? Since 2004. 2004. Yeah, 21st year of competition shooting, member since 2004.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Wells. I'm the Area 6 Director for USPSA, and I started in this sport in 2001 and have had fun ever since.
I'm Bruce Gary. I'm the Area 1 Director. I joined in 1988, I think. I was first elected to Area 1 in 2001, served a few terms, and then came back onto the board in 2014.
Good evening. I'm Rick Brutzel, Director of IT for USPSA. I've been employed since 2012.
We also have some other members of the staff in the room. I'm going to ask them to come up to the microphone and introduce themselves. Please. That is all staff in the room.
Hi, I'm Heather Wolkenhauer, Office Manager.
I'm Jody Human. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of NROI, and I've been involved with the sport since 2010.
I'm Michael Brooks, and I'm the Assistant Director of Media and Events.
I am Nathan Peralt. I also work in the IT department under Rick.
If you wouldn't mind, I would like another round of applause for all the staff and everybody, both staff for this match and our general USPSA staff. Okay, like I mentioned, when we get to questions, I'd like to have everybody come up to the microphone so that everybody listening on the live stream can hear the questions as well as the answer. We had a little bit of problem with that the first time, so we're going to try to correct that. We're going to go through a few general comments that cover a lot of the questions that came in. Then we're going to try to cover a few individual questions, and then we'll open it up to questions on the floor. So one of the big items that came across was the removal process. And we want everybody to know that we took this very seriously, and that's why it may have seemed to some to take a long time, but it was a slow process. We did not attempt to keep anything hidden during that process. We do need to remind everybody that the president is an employee of the organization, and due to that, we have to keep employee confidentiality standards for both the state of Washington and Kentucky. The probably second one that came up was bylaws review. This has been going on for a while, as you probably saw in some of the minutes over the last few years. We've looked at many different structures, looked at Delaware corporate nonprofits, which is where we are organized, looked at new nonprofits, their bylaws, had our council look at things. So we've been trying to look at as many angles as possible, looked into details of the different structures, why one works for one and works for another. But one of the things that drives this is the fact that our bylaws were written when the organization had about 1,000 members. We want the organization to continue to grow, want the organization to be here when we hit 50,000, 75, 100,000 members and 20 years down the road. So changes that we feel like we need are to ensure that continued growth, ensure continuity for both the organization and our employees. This is one of the members meetings. We hope to have members meetings for every national event that we handle, rather than just doing an annual meeting every year. One of the things our current bylaws talks about is annual financial statement. We do that, put that out in March. It is in July, sorry. It is put in the minutes of the July 13th meeting. The reason it's done in July is because it's after our audit. The next question that's covered a lot is a special election. One of the things that we want to do is make sure we know exactly what structure changes we need to make and have those put in front of the members and have that all completed before we start a special election, so that there is no question about what the election is for, what the position is. Everybody is clear on exactly what the status is when we start the special election. We will start that process as soon as possible. We will have the bylaws, hopefully have a draft within a month or 6 weeks, and then possibly be able to vote on them in a January in-person meeting. With that, I'm going to start. I believe Gary had a question or two. Oh. Yes, if you look at the announcements, you will see that we have a board of directors meeting scheduled starting the 2nd of November and every week through the first part of the year. If that's how long it takes us to get the bylaws corrected, we will be meeting weekly until we get that done. And we're just going to go through a few questions that showed up kind of individually. I handed a few out. I didn't hand them to everybody, but I think, Gary, did you have one? I did not. Okay. Then I probably will start with Troy.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is from Richard Ingram. and he says he'd like to know why USPSA can't do a remote learning series for RO instruction with online questions and content. This would ensure a consistent training approach with national scale. The online content can be supported by a practical component, perhaps as part of a regional or sectional pre-match, and the current delivery is antiquated and costly in terms of time and cost. So we are working to move our training online, at least the rules and why to being an RO. We have some of that online already. And we took some of the preliminary stuff that we typically covered in the seminar and put that online as a prerequisite for the seminar. We're going to continue to put that material on so that we shorten the lecture presentation and get the rules, et cetera, out of the way. But that is going to be a prerequisite of passing that to get to the seminar. So it's not just going to be a gimme. The how to RO is going to be in person. That's going to be our in-person training part. That may shorten the time required for a class and may reduce the cost on the club that hosts it, because right now the expense of travel is covered in the cost of the class. The host is responsible for the housing the instructor and meals for the instructor, and that doesn't have to be really fancy, but it has to be a clean, decent room and some meals, so however they do that. So that may lessen the cost of that a little bit. The problem with doing it completely online is it essentially just doesn't work. I can't teach somebody, I can't put their feet in the right position, I can't show them how to hold a timer online because a lot of people don't get it that way, right? I have no problem moving a lot of the rules and instructional materials online and making that a prerequisite, but the in-person, hands-on, how to RO is probably never going to go away as far as being an in-person thing. We have 10 instructors that are pretty highly trained and very experienced. I think taking the lecture part and putting some of the rules online will eliminate some of the variance that we sometimes see in the seminars, but the on-the-ground stuff is pretty much consistent from instructor to instructor. So we are working on it. It's not going to be an overnight process, but hopefully in 2022, we will begin to do that prior to the class. Second question is from Jordan Buchanan, and he says, PCC Division Firearms Definitions, please address reasons for not allowing legal configurations of braced firearms in the PCC Division. The growing popularity of such firearms would welcome more beginners, youth to the sport who may already own such a firearm. Yes, I understand the acronym says carbine, denoting a type of rifle. However, if SBRs of shorter length are allowed, then braced pistols should be allowed as well. Thank you in advance for your consideration. So SBRs, as everybody knows, is a short-barreled rifle. USPSA rules simply require that you legally own that SBR. We don't check it because we don't enforce federal law, but I can't think of very many people that would show up with an SBR that they don't legally own. The other catch to that is 5110 in the rule book, competition rules, says handguns with shoulder stocks and or foregrips of any kind are prohibited. The other thing about adding a brace or a shoulder stock or a foregrip to a handgun covers in that rule. And then the ATF, as you all know, has flip-flopped a lot on braces, et cetera. So we don't want to run afoul of anything with the ATF. So short barrel rifles are legally owned. It is a rifle division. So carbines, short barreled rifles are legal, but I don't see opening that can of worms by allowing braces and foregrips on handguns, because then we're going to see a lot of different changes there. So.
Thanks, Troy. This question is from John Budniatis. I think I'm pronouncing it right. The title is Production Division. I bet you know what's coming. Okay. And there are three parts to this question. People talk about production dying. Attendance seems to confirm it. High-capacity divisions are growing. Does production need saving? Or is the question, why are people leaving? Stages are designed high-capacity friendly, and low cap is forced into standing reloads. Question, What has USPSA done to teach clubs how stages are made to challenge all divisions and punish none? Finally, third part is to make production more attractive. Most focus on 15-round or full mag at 121 millimeters. That may address a symptom, but not the root cause. Question: what steps has USPSA done to determine the root cause? Email survey, poll on Facebook, 3 directors discussing over beers. Any change should have input from all the membership. Email is cheap. So I'll start out by saying I know a shooter in New Hampshire that shoots production because it is difficult. It's a different challenge. So maybe there's nothing wrong with 10 rounds there. But I also see a broader overarching situation here that's beyond production. And I see 3 conflicts in the way we do divisions. You have dots versus iron sights, high cap versus low cap, major versus minor. And that's going to take a lot of discussion, and I think we're all aware of it, and it deserves the time to be discussed. Finally, the question about the entire membership having a say, and that sounds great, and I don't oppose that, but should a person that shoots only open, should their opinion have the same weight on production as a person that just shoots production? I don't know. What about the revolver shooters? If someone just shoots revolver, should they have the same weight of their opinion on production division as someone that shoots production? It's something we need to consider. In the last meeting, we talked about doing a polling of the membership. Rick tells us that there are ways to tweak who gets these emails to try to skew it towards people that actually, we're getting opinions from people that are actually familiar with the divisions that we're asking their opinion on. And as far as stage design, that's legitimate. I think we need to look more of articles in Front Sight Magazine, education on how to design stages, not just for high cap, low cap, left-handed, right-handed skews, making stages interesting. And I know that's a topic that's dear to Jody and Troy also. I'm on the Rules Committee, so I assure you that this is going to be talked about, and you're going to be hearing more about it. Thank you.
Just a note as I pass it down, I know everyone would probably like to hear every question that was turned in, but I think we're at 80-some questions that were turned in over the last 2 weeks. So we've tried to pick some that were representative of most of the questions, and that's other than the statements I had that covered quite a few categories. I tried to get a mix of the remaining questions so that we had more things covered.
All right, I have a question from Kelly Brown. The subject was area matches. Why aren't the area, USPSA, and Steel Challenge matches required to be held before nationals? If the sport is supposed to be a build of nationals as the grand champion, then area matches held after nationals seem to negate and go against USPSA and Steel Challenge competitive mission. Now, this is what I know so far, and if there's anything else to add, somebody else can jump in. So each area match is ran independently of USPSA, and it is on the area directors to put on that match. I don't think there's anything else on that.
One addition I would note to that, and this kind of goes to history, because there is such a limited number of weekends in the year and the number of major matches that are held, the area matches traditionally have a hard time staying off of each other. One of the things that was done, and I really don't remember exactly when, years ago, was to move the slots that are awarded from an area match from the same year as that match takes place to the following nationals. So if you compete in the 2021 area match, if that wins you a slot, it is a slot for the 2022 Nationals. That was done to help the situation and give the area matches a longer season to work with.
I guess we're skipping Bruce 6. I have a question from Christopher Primavera about USPSA political action. USPSA has remained silent on legislative issues that impact our sport. Magazine limits, restrictions on possession of firearms, and restrictions on ammunition sales are an existential threat to all shooting sports. What actions will USPSA take in the future to include our concerns in upcoming legislative and judicial proceedings? I'll give you my perspective on it, and then I'll probably throw it to Gary for a more official answer. There's a couple of issues at play. One is we're a 501c3. 501c3 are prohibited from getting involved in campaigns, political campaigns. You can't make any statement for or against a candidate. We can do, as 501c3, some political lobbying, but it's a slippery slope, dangerous area as far as I'm concerned, in that there's a substantial amount test that the IRS applies, and if they deem that you do a substantial amount of lobbying, you can lose your 501c3 status, and in fact, the officers who allow that substantial amount of lobbying can be penalized personally. So there's a bunch of stuff there. The third thing I'd say, this is just Bruce's perspective, is I'm happy being a 35,000 member shooting sports organization staying under the radar, right? What I don't want to do is say a headline saying USPSA is doing such and such and put a crosshairs on us. I'm happy keeping the sport healthy and so on, but that's just my perspective. Gary, anything to add?
Alrighty, so I got a question here from Jane McCall. She asked, can we have one place to see written statements from those running for president and perhaps a live stream each one? We are going to be setting up a central repository for all presidential candidates. So you can go there, see any information they've submitted, questions they've submitted, and images they've submitted. I also have a question from Ivan Lecce, requesting that information be easier to find on the USPSA website, specifically the board meeting minutes. And we are working on getting those. There's a lot of minutes going back a long ways in a lot of different formats, but we are working to get those scanned or put into a database so that they can be more easily searchable. Don't have an ETA on that though.
2 alpha.
Is there anybody on the board that has any statements before we get started with questions from the floor? Okay.
I was going to add one thing to the political question, and that is one thing we could do is give up our 501c3 status. If we're a for-profit corporation, then we have more latitude and we could do things. And that might be a conversation we have down the road somewhere. So far, we've been happy being a nonprofit, and very little of our revenue is taxable. I think it's the advertising revenue and some things like that. But that's one avenue we could look at if we wanted to get involved in lobbying.
Okay, and we will open it up to questions from the floor. If you would please step over to the mic and introduce yourself and your question.
Gentlemen, my name is Patrick Brown. I've been a member for about 3 years. The board has stated that they're looking to create 2 separate and distinct positions of leadership in the organization. One of those positions being discussed is president, and the other one as yet to be titled. let's say. One of the things I'd like to know is, what will the total financial impact on the organization be individually of those two positions? And total impact, I mean salaries, benefits, insurance, things like that.
I think I can speak for the board on that. That is in every discussion that we have, what the total impact of this structure versus another structure. And I don't think we've really decided on what that structure is going to be, whether it changes the president, keeps it the same, adds a position, or keeps the same number of positions we have today. But every time we talk about those positions, the cost to the organization is included in that conversation.
Has there been any mention of what the expectation is going to be, what an amount would be to assign to each of those positions?
We work on that as we work on what the duties of the position are going to be. That will be defined on what the duties of the position will be. But that is part of every conversation.
Okay. Kind of a follow-up to that. The information I get comes straight out of the audited financial statements for the last several years. Salaries and benefits has increased from $810,000 in 2017 to $1,000,001 and some change in current year. The payrolls increased $283,000 in just the last 2 years alone. $136,000 increase between 2020 and 2019, and $147,000 between 2019 and 2018. As a percentage, salaries and benefits are 44.7% of revenue in 2020, 35.9% in 2019, 34.6% in 2018, 35.69% in 17. During the same period of time, the net assets from operations, which is a fancy term for what most people call net profit, okay, have decreased from a high of 2017 of $333,000 to $92,000 in 2020. My first part of the question is, how's the organization going to afford another highly compensated individual based on those results?
I'm not sure anybody's considering an additional highly paid position. And that goes back to what I just talked about. Every variation we talk about involves what that's going to cost the organization. The overall salary, and anybody can add to this, but as we went through those years that you mentioned, revenues have increased. And one of the main discussions that happens at the board is, as our revenue stream increases, what services can we increase? So we have increased our IT staff, increased staff all the way across, the revamp of our whole IT, whether it's the parts you see or background of taking care of your data, all of that has been revamped heavily in the last years. But when you talk about the net profits, the way you use net profits, it did go down. I'm going to give you a little personal feeling here, is our budget should be set up so that we have zero at the end of the year, because our plan is to turn everything that comes into the organization back into member services. So that balance and making sure that we're going to have enough income to cover member services. But if we can increase membership service or membership and activity income, we can return that to the members.
Okay, on that note, I realize that the organization is organized as a nonprofit. That's for tax purposes. The organization still has to run as a business. And if a business breaks even every year, there is no future to it. So I back up to, your net assets from operations are decreasing. Your biggest expense is salaries by far. individually. How do you project that out into the future to maintain financial well-being of the company?
So just a small clarification. Some of the increases in payroll that Sherwin alluded to are really total changes in our staff count. We have added in the last 30 months 4 new employees. And so when we start comparing 18 to 2020, as well as even some of the most recent changes that you won't see until the 2021 statements come out. But keeping that in mind, as well as changes in labor laws for the state of Washington. A series of changes have increased our wage cost for anyone who resides in the state of Washington, which is where our home office is, by approximately 20%. So it was either pay our employees and adhere to the labor law or move out of Washington. That wasn't a choice we were prepared to, wasn't a decision we were prepared to make at the time, as far as moving out of Washington, and so our choice was to pay our employees and adhere to that. So there are a lot of intricacies buried into those numbers that aren't necessarily reflective of just simple pay increases.
Yeah, I'm not referring to individual persons' pay raises. I'm talking about the overall cost of employees going up.
And a lot of that's why. I mean, we see
Right.
that total raised because of the changes in labor laws and the increased staff members.
So that's what my concern is if you were to add another position that, in all honesty, is probably excess of $100,000, and your net profits are 92, you're already in the hole for the first year that person takes on that position. So I guess that leads me into the next question is, what's the board's plan to compensate any additional employees? How are they going to work that into the budget?
I think as far as working it into the budget, we obviously have a balance of what was a presidential salary up to this point, and so there is room for some backfill there. But ultimately, it is how the decision from this board is flushed out into those positions. To summarize what Sherwin had said, it is, very possible that it's not an increase in staff, and it may not stay exactly the same. Depending on how the discussions progress, I think it's, even a possibility that we see it stay flat or even reduce potentially over time.
Okay, so my understanding from publicly available information is that similar position in previous years paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000 to $130,000. I believe that's from the 990. So you've publicly stated that the new president's position is going to be $60-some thousand. You're working with another $60,000 of savings, and a similar position I'm thinking is probably in the neighborhood of in excess of $100,000 if you're going to title it as a CEO type of or executive director type position. So my question comes in, is the board working off of a budget, or are they simply assigning, we'll pay the salary whatever it takes and we'll make the budget work?
I think the best answer there is the salary will be appropriate to the duties assigned to either the single position or the multiple positions as it is derived to its final definition by the board. And right now, I don't know that we're far enough down that path to be able to put a pin on that.
Okay, so there hasn't been any discussion yet as far as what any guidelines set as to what the limits are going to be and a defined amount. Are we going to pay in excess of $120,000 for a new position, or are we going to keep it below to the $60,000 that we have remaining to work with from the previous position?
Not to speak for the board, not being a member of the board, but I'm not sure that we're at a point where we can directly answer that.
Okay. I guess this one's pretty simple. Why does the board believe 2 positions will be necessary, or if they are necessary? Have they made that decision yet?
I think that's all part of the discussion. The structure has, no matter what structure you go with, there are some hiccups to it. Whether it needs to be 2 positions, almost everywhere we look at other corporate structures, the positions are not together. Recommendations from everybody we've talked to are not to have them together. So that's the information we've been giving. So we're looking at that and looking to see how we can closer mirror what is recommended as a structure.
So the board is considering 2 separate and distinct positions?
The board is considering 2 positions, 1 position. We don't know yet.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to ask if you could allow somebody else to.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Christopher Oosthuizen. I was also going to ask a similar question on a potential CEO position, but I think we've beaten that horse. So, quick question on the stages. Is there potential for kind of like a centralized catalog of stage designs that maybe individual matches have put on? And if so, is that something that, or if there's not, then is that something that we could put together?
Yes.
Not just classifiers, but.
No, actually, it's something you've got quarter 1 or 2? Quarter 1, all approved stages that have come through DNRI for level 2, level 3 matches will be going on the website. And then from there, we're going to be able to have stages that are submitted that will go on there. How we're going to break them down, we're still working on whether it'll be small, medium, large, speed shoot, whatever, but yes, that is something that Rick has got on his schedule for the first quarter of next year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nope. You don't want me to have this.
Gentlemen, Trevor Cotter, nice to meet you. I already know all of you. My question is there any interest or has there been discussion about lowering power factor to within SAMI spec for multiple reasons? One, to allow an increase in sponsorship dollars, being that it's about bringing new competitors into the sport. Well, if new competitors can avoid, flying AMO to nationals, they can come in, they want to shoot open, they've gotten into open, they don't feel like loading, they come here, they go buy plus P ammo off Federal's booth, limited guys, they go buy ammo off whoever. But also for liability reasons, we all know that the current gun culture is guns are bad. Are y'all set up for it if someone goes and blows their hand off because they're overpressuring around? Are you prepared for that person with a really good attorney to take you in front of a jury of their peers and possibly not win that case? For the fact that open requires you to run well above SAMI spec for most people running open. Is there any interest in that at all?
Yes. So
I love it. Simple answers, man. Yeah. Great.
So there is a group of open shooters in Area 7 that are disciples of Atlas Gun Works, Trident Army shooting team, bunch of open guys. And I've asked them to give me a case for this purpose. They have given it to me, well thought out, well documented. I have shared it with the rest of the Rules Committee, and it's on my agenda for discussion.
Love it.
Does that answer your question?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Josh Wilson. This is my second year of membership. I wanted to ask about, and I know this was discussed quite a bit in the last meeting, so I don't really want to tread on the same ground, but I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So first, I'll just acknowledge and thank Sherwin for stepping into a role that you didn't want to be in the first place. But I'm still trying to wrap, yeah. But I'm still trying to wrap my head around the delay in a special election in order to discuss changing the bylaws and possibly restructuring the organization. When I read the bylaws, it seems like in a situation like this where the office has been vacated, isn't our prime directive at that point to hold that special election, because the president must be elected by 1 vote per member. If we're not fulfilling that part of it, aren't we really not fulfilling our bylaws as it stands right now?
The bylaws say that special election is to happen in a timely manner. And because of the situations, the board wanted to make sure that we have everything in place to do that properly. Basically, we're looking at the longevity of the organization and this chance to make a change. Basically, I understand what you're saying. It feels like it's a delay. I'll be honest with you, and I think all the guys up here said it. I don't want this job any longer than I need to. So I'm not wasting time. That's not what I'm trying to do. Not trying to prolong it, but we want to make sure we do it right.
Okay, thank you.
I think it was, some of this was discussed in the prior meeting as well, but I'll touch on some of it. One of the things that we're wrestling with, and this probably goes to your question as well, Patrick, is that a very small percentage of our members vote for president. It tends to be somewhat of a name recognition contest. And what that does is it puts the org at risk of someone being elected who either doesn't want to or doesn't know how to do the CEO job. And president of the organization, as the bylaws are currently constructed, has all the keys, right? They are the signer of checks. They are the signer on contracts. They are the manager of director level employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we think, or I'll speak for me, I think that puts the organization at risk as we get bigger and have more members and more services and so on. We really want to have a professional running the organization. We've been having running the business, I'll put it that way. We've been having this conversation for about 2 years, but one of the places it's bogged down is the fact that if we make a change like this during the middle of a president's term, we're basically changing the grounds on which they ran and accepted the job. If we change it in the middle of an election, then that creates chaos for the election itself. So we're looking at this as a sweet spot right now where we have a window of opportunity to make this change that we're talking about for 2 years without creating chaos. And we're trying to figure out what that looks like. And ultimately what we have is the best long-term health of the org at stake.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yes.
So you've indicated you want to have somebody that can come in and really manage the business. Forgive me if I'm not understanding all this correctly. I'm a new member, but I am trying to understand the history. Wasn't there a period of time previously within the last, 10 years or so where a separate position was created and they were basically like an executive director, executive assistant, something along those lines, because the current president held a full-time job and had other things they were doing. My understanding is that didn't work out too great that time, which is what led to the increased salary for president and the expectation that they would take that on as a full-time position.
Yes, I don't think anybody's going to argue with that there have been issues in the past. And we are looking at that because of the issues that have been in the past, the whole history. We're looking at it and we want to put some guardrails around it to try to prevent the things that happened in the past. I mean, it is looking at history. This is what happened. How can we prevent that in the future? As Bruce said, we are really looking at the longevity and the future of the sport, how we can ensure that it's here 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road for the juniors that are just starting now. And that's at the heart of everything we're doing.
Thank you. The thing I'd add, and I totally agree with what Sherwin said, is that one of the potential scenarios we're looking at is to split the responsibilities. We respect the fact that the members elect the president. We don't want to mess with that. At the same time, we want to have a professional running the business side of things. So we're looking at the mix of responsibilities that says we want someone to run the business and make sure that the books balance and we pass our audits and all those kinds of things. We want to make sure the members have a national representative on the board of directors. In between, there's a lot of gray things that we've got to figure out, like who runs the nationals. Right now, the president has sole authority over the nationals. Should there be a single signer on contracts, or should contracts be ratified by the board? And all of that stuff, I could probably list off 30 things that we're talking about. All of that stuff is going to be considered in determining what the roles and responsibilities are of the different, let's call it positions. And then we'll start deciding what salaries look like for that. One thing I'd add to your comment earlier, Patrick, is that as we set the salary for the first full-time president we've ever had, we actually did a lot of research into what the salary is for a CEO of a nonprofit in northwestern U.S., and we're pretty much keeping on the low end of that scale. We're going to keep doing that research as we set our salaries and make sure that we're, have a reality check on how we set the salaries commensurate with the roles that we're hiring for.
We have anybody else?
Hi, I'm Dan Minter. I'm the California Northern Section Coordinator. I know everybody on the board. I'm here at the request of a friend of mine to ask all of you about your opinions and your support for Steel Challenge. Okay. There's many people in the Steel Challenge shooters who don't shoot USPSA matches. They only shoot Steel Challenge. We all know that. And many of them feel slighted. I work Steel Challenge matches. I worked the Area 2 Steel Challenge match. When I was the interim area director, I got that Area 2 Steel Challenge match going. And I worked that match every year because I made a commitment to the match director that as long as he did it, I'd be there working with him. And I honor that. And those guys are USPSA members. They pay their USPSA dues every year. And I hear a lot of complaints from them that they're just the redheaded stepchildren.
Let me take just that for a second, because I apologize. I missed some of that at the head of this. And I think, hopefully I can speak for everybody up here. If there is one thing that we've all agreed to so far in the bylaws part, is that in the beginning of our bylaws, it will state that USPSA is not only USPSA matches, USPSA is Steel Challenge, is multi-gun. When we use the term USPSA, it includes all of the disciplines. And one of the reasons that one of the reasons that Steel Challenge was added to the USPSA banner was because it is easy to train people and get people started and help them improve their skills, which is one of the main things for our charter, is increasing defensive and firearm skills. Steel Challenge fits in that so well that I really hate it that people feel like it's a stepchild, because it is at the heart of who we are.
A couple of things around the Steel Challenge part of it. In 2015, there were 98 affiliated Steel Challenge clubs. There's 262 as of today. There are 7,501, I think that's the right number, Rick, 7,501 unique USPSA members that have just Steel Challenge on their activity. And as far as the actual activities, I believe the number we can put about, again, I didn't bring my laptop, is about 48,000 activities so far this year on Steel Challenge. And this goes specifically to some of the questions that were sent in as far as how do the matches get affiliated, the Form C with regards to whether it's under a section or an area director. There are some things that need to change with regards to how a section match gets sanctioned as a Tier 2 event, because it doesn't actually list it listed as regions, because Steel Challenge was originally set up as the World Speed Shooting Championship, and the regions were divided up around internationally. So there are some changes that need to go in there and how the matches get sanctioned. And I think that kind of goes directly to some of the questions that you may be following up with.
It has been, some people have talked about having a separate board for Steel Challenge. My personal opinion, this is just personal opinion, we struggle to get 8 area directors, and I don't know how many sections we have. Do you know, Jake or Rick?
Between 50 and 55.
Okay, so we would need about roughly 75 additional volunteers. I think we would struggle with that. One of the things that, I don't think the board's heard this out of me yet, but one of the things that I thought of that might help that is in sections where the section coordinator is not involved in Steel Challenge, giving that section coordinator the ability to name an assistant section coordinator that could work on the Steel Challenge side. Well, yeah. We've talked about assistant area director as well as assistant section coordinator to try to help that out. To try to set up the full structure, I don't believe we can support it. I wish I could say we could. I don't see any way we can support a full structure. But it is part of us, and we will find a way to get those people in place and get it supported.
Last little bit, I've been talking to a lot of folks in Steel Challenge, and one of the things that has been asked of me personally, how are we represented on the board? And that is something I think we've been starting with our discussions on the board, is how we just put them under our areas, and we will be there, representative on the board. If that happens, if we can, make that happen. Right now, the people in Area 6, they come to me and I say, we're going to have an Area 6 championship, and we do it. They feel very comfortable with that. But there's nothing in the bylaws saying we can, but there's nothing in the bylaws saying we can't.
Okay.
I'm back. I wanted to ask a question about the live stream. I know it's a huge leap in the right direction having a live stream, and I know you are having enough fun working the bugs out in that. But is there any interest in taking the live stream side of it and going to multiple big, large matches and possibly structuring it towards putting it behind a paywall, whether at the USPSA website level or another website level, to generate revenue from the live stream to help with the overall budgets at the end of the year?
Live stream is a member service, and we're not going to charge for it. If we go down the road of creating a revenue stream off of something like that, it's taxable. It's not something that we want to get into. Taking the numbers from the limited amount of live streaming that we've been able to do since Low Cap Nationals, because it's new for us, and then presenting that possibly to outside production companies to do something with, yes, there's a possibility of that. But as far as doing a paywall behind having members pay for it, no. And the biggest reason is that your $40 membership or your $25 membership, we're not going to increase it so you can watch live streaming videos that are on there. If somebody wanted to take the match structure that we have as far as nationals that we're doing, that's what we kind of protect. If it's a level 2 match, level 3 match that any member wants to put on in a range out there under USPSA rules, live stream, try something out behind that, that is one of those things that's outside of the control of USPSA HQ. So take Dragons Cup. If you guys want to take Dragons Cup and say that's a series of matches throughout Texas or Area 4 area or however, and do that, that's great, you can. But as far as the national events that we're part of, no, that's not going to be behind a paywall. That's a member service.
Okay.
There's all kinds of issues as far as your image release and all. There's all kinds of legal things going down that, as an organization, yeah, we don't want to do that. So it's a member service. And as far as, like I said, the control of the waiver that you give us at the match, that we're reproducing your image, but we're not gaining any financial thing off of it. That's the other side of it as well.
Okay. But so to follow up on that, you said, like, if using Dragons Cup as an example, if they wanted to put the match on through USPSA, it's a USPSA sanctioned match, but they could in themselves have a production company come in and monetize it that route.
Releases and all
okay.
that stuff. So,
would there?
So they would be responsible for any of the legal releases or anything like that.
Okay.
Is if the competitors as a USPSA member went to those matches as a sanctioned event, yes.
Okay. Dope.
Any additional questions?
Care if I follow up with something?
No, that's fine.
Okay. I'll get off the previous topic, but it's along the same lines. Does the board have any concerns about the financial trends of the organization over the last 4 years? And if they do, what are those concerns?
I can speak for myself. My biggest concern currently in the economy is the ammo shortage and how that affects every club.
Well, that would be a follow-up question for me, but I'm talking about the decline in a rather important number of the organization, which is this net assets of operations.
Take into account that in 2020 with the pandemic, there was a decrease of almost 25% of activity fees in 2020 because clubs were shut down, states were shut down, and we've seen in comparison in 2021 to 2019 that we have roughly a 15-16% increase over 2020, and we have about a 15 or 16% increase of activities so far this year compared to last year, but it's still a little flat, about 15% down to 2019. And some of that is still the effects of ammo and clubs that are not able to participate, members that aren't able to participate because of the worldwide pandemic that is going on, things that are somewhat out of our control. We have maintained over 533 affiliated clubs, where at the beginning of the year, we were only at 499. So we've seen an increase in new clubs so far this year. And as the year has progressed, we continue to see an increase in activities. So we're hoping that we're going to see an increase by the end of the year in activities closer to 2019, but it's probably going to be a little bit off. As we go into budgeting and for 2022, it'll be looking at the trends that we see on the ground now this year in comparison more to 2019 than in 2020 because of the shutdowns that were going on.
Okay, these trends that you're talking about, how do they show up in the bottom line? Because the bottom line says that the trends are being netted out by expense.
We look at trends every month. There's a dashboard that tells us exactly what the activities are, what the activities compared to the previous year are, and the budget is adjusted according to our best guess projections. Because honestly, when we're doing a budget in January, weather, pandemic, all of that comes into effect, and it becomes a little bit of a best guess. So we build in a cushion, to try to allow for that and anything that comes up.
Also, Patrick, in 2020, please understand that we did not lay off, terminate any employee. The office was shut down. We moved every employee to work from home, which was additional expenses. We didn't lose any member services while people were, and the actual folks in the Washington office are still working from home into this year. The office is occupied usually by 1 or 2 people throughout the week. So while there was a decrease in activity fees based on clubs not being able to host matches or members not going to matches, we still maintained the same level of services and kept all of the employees working for USPSA. Okay. That was a goal to have. There was enough work, enough things to go on, supporting events, supporting areas, and all of the stuff that was going on in the IT area and upgrades that were going on to not lay any of those employees off. So yeah, decrease in activities, kept payroll the same.
Yeah, I've acknowledged that actually payroll has increased. But I guess my point is that prior to 2020, I'm not picking on 2020 for obvious reasons. There's a trend from 2017 forward that I'm concerned about. And that percentage only increased by 3%. So there's still a lack of some information there, but I'll just ask this question real simple. Does the board have any plans that they're interested in sharing that address how to change the direction of those trends? Talking about the net assets.
That's in every budget discussion, every financials that we do, that we review every month. Those discussions are ongoing constantly on how we can keep on track and what we need to do to stay on track or to try to get things to start moving the other direction. Some of that becomes member services and helping the clubs, find ways to keep their matches on the ground. Some of it goes back to out of our control, from the ammo shortages.
Okay. Well, it just concerns me because somebody brought up the monetization of that, and not that I disagree with it, but it's not on the table as an option, and that's for good reason. But what I'm asking is there anything on the table that does increase substantially the bottom line of the organization? And to follow up with that, just to make this briefer, the ammo shortage seems to be, at least from my perspective, an issue going into the next season. Does the board have any information, industrial information or anything about how that's going to affect future numbers of the organization going into 2022? Is the participation going to be there? Is there a projection for the participation to be there? Because I know in my situation, that's a huge concern going into 2022. Are we going to be able to participate at the same level we participated at this year?
I think really the only thing we can answer there is everyone we've talked to and has made statements, you know, the people in the industry say they're doing everything they can and they feel that they are catching up. I mean, that's the information we get. They feel they're catching up. They feel they're going to get there. Is it going to be over tomorrow? I don't think anybody would tell you that.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm saying is I don't see it
But
ending.
they are confident that they are making gains on it.
Okay. All right, very well. I'm done. Thank you.
How's it going? Kyle Stevens. Know everybody on the board, so no introduction there. My question was just because you alluded to it a couple times. How much research has gone into foregoing the nonprofit status and entering into a for-profit structure? Obviously, advertising dollars, stuff like that would significantly help the organization. Is there anything that has been looked at or anything like that other than just talked about in board meetings? Has there been any research?
You got anything on that?
Thanks for the question, Kyle. As for the impact of that, we already actually have a taxable branch of our revenue, specifically print ads that you see within Front Sight Magazine, or any of the digital media that you see on our website or on the app. Those produce a revenue stream for us that is taxable because it exists outside of our core mission. Our core mission being promotion of safe, fun, fair, practical shooting, right?
Yep.
As for the impacts of potentially giving up our tax exempt status, we typically, on our taxable revenue stream, run somewhere around a 17% tax rate. The amount of tax would, to Patrick's point earlier, would actually continue to, erode our net asset structure. But we have looked into what it would allow us to do, not to a great extent, because the penalty of giving that up actually outweighs the benefits for an organization our size. To go back to the political involvement, 35,000 members strong, yes, but what type of lobbying base can we support with 34,000 to 35,000 members at this point in time? Do we, then compete with organizations like the NRA or some of them that exist on the West Coast, specifically within California? Are we competing with them for either same funding dollars or the same national attention level? And I'm not sure that we can actually do that currently.
My question wasn't necessarily towards the lobbying aspect, as more of continued growth of the organization. So being able to purchase land for ranges, any other sort of assets that could continue to make the organization money over the long term, rather than just relying on membership dues and advertising dollars.
Purchasing land, that one has been discussed in great detail over the years. Going back 12, 15 years, there had been discussions on purchasing land, and actually I think it happened at one point. A small piece of land was purchased by the org. And do we operate our own range? Does it generate cash? Is that where we run our nationals? We could actually do that with our current status. We could create that type of real property investment if the board chooses to pursue that, in which case, again, our tax-free status would be great, right?
Yeah.
It's more cash flow available to help pay for that. But the realistic truth is, for us to own it cost us more over the course of time than it does to lease a range such as CMP here where we're at, or any of the ranges that we've frequented over the years, without having a substantial operation budget to simply keep that property up, to use it 3 or 4 times a year.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Kyle.
Hello, my name is Dwight Hughes. I've been in the sport since '92. I know this is probably going to make a lot of people not very happy with me, but the one thing that I wanted to question is, has the board looked into moving the headquarters from the People's Republic of Washington to a state which is more gun-friendly and a little bit probably less costly for the people to live? I live in the People's Republic of Washington, so I can call it that. But the bottom line is, even the NRA is moving from the north to the south. And so the bottom line is, we need to make it someplace where, number one, Jay Inslee can't decide that, hey, I'm going to go after these guys. And we've got to make it where it's a little bit more sustainable. Now, I know that means relocating people and staff and stuff like that, but it does need to be looked at, in my opinion.
I think, those kind of things are always discussed. Yes, as you refer to it, the People's Republic of Washington, that subject comes up. We have a lot of people working remotely, so there is less and less Washington involvement all the time. So, but we do look at all of those political things all the way across. It's always discussed. But then, like you said, the staff is a very important part, and disruption of our staff is not taken lightly.
I agree with that. Thank you.
Evening. My name's Neil Davis. I've been playing this game for about 5 years. I'm a newbie compared to most of y'all. I had some thoughts that came up after the last meeting. I wasn't here for it, but I caught the second half of it. I'm 50. I've been doing this for 5 years. I got a late start. I got kids 13 and younger. But I enjoy this organization. I am passionate about it. I see some trends by some people where I think they come at this sport, thanks, Mickey, from the perspective of what can this sport do for me? And if you're asking that question, I think you're doing it all wrong. I just do. This is my first nationals to volunteer at. I appreciate the opportunity. I lose money hand over fist to come here and do this. There's a lot of me's out there.
May I interrupt for just a second? Because that's something I want to really make sure everybody understands, that we try to compensate the ROs for our nationals. And I know area matches, every match director runs into it. It is so hard to try to compensate an RO, and the amount of time that the ROs spend on the ground here, I doubt that there's any of them that it doesn't cost a large amount of money for them just to volunteer.
That is not where I'm coming from, Sherman.
I don't mean that that's where you're coming from. But I want everybody to understand that it's costing all you people, all you ROs, money to be here and volunteer for the sport. And it shows everybody's love for the sport and the reason they want to be here. And it goes to the people sitting on this board as well. I've worked with a lot of these people for a lot of years. They're not in it for the money.
No, exactly. And that's
zeros don't mean anything, right?
Absolutely. And that's where I wanted to start with, but I wanted to give everybody a little background on me just to let them know where I'm coming from. I've met most of the board members, and I know you don't do it for the money because there ain't any there. So we appreciate all the time and the effort that you guys do.
We know that you're trying to make the best choices you can with what you have in terms of limitations. So I don't really have a question. I had more of a challenge to the membership to just to look at it, what can you do for this organization, and not from the perspective of what can this organization do for me? Because if that's where you are, make an attitude adjustment. That's all I have.
Do we have any more questions? Do we have anybody on the board that would like to add anything? Yes, go ahead.
I'm Danielle Kohler. A lot of you know me. And I've been involved in this sport since, 1988. This is before we even had open guns. But I just kind of wanted to summarize and support our board of directors. Not all the questions that came up in the first meeting came up in this one, but just to reiterate, understanding these guys are, again, working as volunteers, and they deserve all of our respect. We vote them in as representatives, and this is a representative organization. So if you want something, or you have an opinion, or you have a complaint, you need to communicate with your area director so that they can bring it to the board and have it discussed at that level. To sort of just reiterate about what we're trying to do here, I think that reorganizing in such a way that we have a person, as in, we'll just call him a CEO, that can run the organization as a business, meaning the person who deals with the employees and all of the structural part, and then having a president that actually represents the values and the vision of the people and the players, the people who are doing this game, and also being able to have our board represent us as that vision as well, and so that they can lead us into the future, so that we can grow the organization. We're at a size right now, and I agree with Bruce, is that this is a very key point where we can actually make this change. It's ideal. Let's get the structure in place. Let's get this organization really moving forward. I love USPSA. I haven't been able to be as involved as I was early in the time. I'm trying to get more involved again. But I really want to reiterate, as a business, we need to run this organization properly as well. And thank you to everybody who volunteers, because again, even though we get some reimbursement, all of us, it costs us to be here, even as competitors or whatever. But thank you, everybody who supports the sport. Thank you, everybody here on the board who works for us. And I appreciate everything that you guys do. So anyway.
So there is some back and forth, obviously, on social media, on the live stream, where people are talking to each other. But there was one question that I could follow along that was asked by Kelly Brown. How many of the board members are ROs or higher? Jim McBurnett gave her the answer, but I believe, if you guys want to answer this, everybody up here is an RO or a CRO, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so Area 7, Lee is a range master. CRO, I think, Troy, you're a range master. CRO, Matt. Matt's got a class coming up. Probably around the Kansas City area. Matt will get a class organized. Bruce? Ooh. Oh, look at all these guys forgetting about the Steel Challenge and multi-gun endorsements. Mr. Wells, you are currently in the RM program, if I'm not mistaken?
Currently in the RM program, been a CRO for quite some years, probably about 15 or 16 years. Been RO since I think the first year I was in USPSA.
I do run a local match in Kansas City, even though I'm not an RO.
Yeah, so Rick Steele is a CRO, and he's not here. Ted Murphy, he just answered as a CRO, runs local club matches. And Chad Stanton, who is the Area 4 director, who was here in the first meeting, is a match director, and I believe is a CRO as well.
I go back a little ways on my RO training. I think I was in Troy's first class. Okay, thanks everybody. If there's no more questions, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for the interaction, the questions that came in, being here tonight, people that are watching. Anytime you have a question, feel free to ask us. The information's on our website, how to get a hold of us. A lot of us have our cell phone numbers out there. The simple email is always area whichever at uspsa.org. That will get to your area director. Feel free to contact anyone. Mine's just president@uspsa.org. Send me whatever you have. I'm open to any information, questions, whatever, but please keep the information coming.
Besides the area director's email address or the employees, which is usually our first name at uspsa.org, at the bottom of there is the full contact list that you can go on, see everybody on there, or you can submit questions if it has something to do with a match or a rule or advertising or any of that. It goes through the system and is routed either to an employee or the area directors. Those are the best ways to contact any of us. Social media messages are not protected communication and normally don't get answered with other than this is my personal social media page, please use our email address. So that is the way to go through the contact form or straight email addresses that are on there.
Okay, that wraps us up. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything.